Welcome everybody to my chess stream here on Twitch and LeeChess.org. My name is International Master William Paschall, and we are going to be playing as Sparklehorse on LeeChess. My account on Twitch is Slaggy. What's up, guys? We have challenges already from the Booker Smith, Satis Troll for Chess 960, and Shan Shah, who beat me yesterday. You're due for revenge, man. Let's see, the other one's correspondence challenge. Alright, so if you would like to play, please challenge me to something between 5-3 and 8-3. Excuse me. We're going to get started here. I don't know, last year, in the spring, I shouldn't say last year, but in the spring we were doing the stream here. I didn't struggle to wake up so much for these morning streams, but it's been hard for me to adjust. I feel a little bit better today. Yesterday didn't go so well. Alright, let me see. We got anybody here in the chat? I don't see the chat. That's weird. I see the stream, but I don't see the chat for some reason. Alright, guys. Should be starting soon. So we're going to start with Booker Smith and then Satis Troll. We get warmed up. There it is. We get warmed up and we're going to play the ever-ready Shah and Shah for revenge. Booker Smith, what's up, man? We're under 2,400. We're playing for the under 2,400 prize. It would be nice. So this is an interesting move I don't face very often. I don't play G3 that much, but when I do, Knight C6 is something you don't see too often. It's just basically going to be a transposition to another opening. For some reason my chat room on Twitch looks really weird, but I see the chat from you for Folier, so I think something with the web page is loading strangely, but I do see that it's functioning. Knight to C6. Okay, well, we have two options, and we can allow black to play E5. Well, actually, three options. I can play a lot of moves here, but I'm going to go for an English opening. Yeah, something weird about my Twitch web page, but it's probably working fine. Looks like the stream is okay. Gladys Troll is here. We are streaming from Budapest, Hungary. Yesterday I visited the famous halls of the first Saturday chess tournaments and hung out with some friends of mine. Guitar player, what's up? We may play some chess in the foreseeable future. I talked to the organizer there about voluntarily playing in an IM tournament just for fun. I mean, he would pay me, but it's not that interesting for me to play in an IM norm tournament, obviously, since I'm already an international master. But since I'm not that in practice, I think I might be willing to play in a tournament where I'm one of the stronger players. Also in November, I'm thinking about going to a tournament, an open tournament here. Okay, Bishop B4. This is actually similar to what you did against me the other day, Booker Smith, where you played... Oh, I'm here for an update on the mysterious IM. Yeah, well, this story I told the other day, I did a little more digging on that, and I'm not sure everyone's going to understand what I'm talking about if they weren't tuned in to my stream the other day, but there was an interesting player I found who I suspected of something strange, and it's like a 79-year-old international master who played some tournaments here in Eastern Europe that were very, very dubious. But I don't want to say any names. He got his title in a series of very quick, very, very dubious tournaments. This is going back like 10 years ago, or 9 years ago. But investigating a little further, I talked to the organizer for Saturday, and he knows Yeah, he knows pretty much all the organizers and chess tournaments in the whole area, and yeah, we agreed that the idea of what I was talking about made sense. This is probably pretty suspicious, but the theory of the guy having two identities, I'm kind of thinking is more and more unlikely. It's probably the fact that there are two people that are just different people, and they're friends or something because they're from the same foreign country. More likely than it being the same person with multiple identities. But that's where it stands right now. I have to do further investigations. I don't think it's like a mysterious like guy with two identities. I'm thinking it's two people who are from the same native country, kind of looking out for each other, but probably not two identities. But I'm certain that the guy cheated. But I'm not gonna start an official investigation. It's not really my place to do that. I was just curious about it. I found out that the guy actually played in a national championship. This guy is an IM now. He's 79, 78 years old, or 79, close to 80. He actually played if you look back, he actually played in a national championship of a respectable chess country back in like 1970, in the early 70s, and finished dead last out of like 16 players. So I'm thinking that this guy, who's now rated like 2400, would have been like at his peak probably like 2400. And yeah, he actually, after these suspicious tournaments where he made his IM norms, he even played more tournaments. One tournament I actually know some of the participants, and it looks kind of dubious. Like another tournament to kind of cement his reputation that his play is really of that level. But it looked to me like, he's just played a bunch of fixed tournaments, and found another tournament basically where all the players drew almost every single game, which is really bizarre. Really bizarre when you have a closed tournament where like every single game is like draws. But I think they were just sort of cementing his rating over 2400 or something like that. But anyway, that's where it stands with my investigation. We'll keep you posted on that, but unfortunately I can't release any names or anything, and that would be kind of incorrect. So again, I'm not like trying to witch hunt anybody. I just don't really like the idea of people blatantly cheating and not getting caught. But anyway, I was more interested in the angle of it, like maybe being this guy who like had multiple identities. Booker Smith, now you didn't need to sacrifice a piece there, did you? I guess you did actually. No, you could have played Bishop D6. Looks like Bishop D6 would have held on to the material. So Bishop E7 would have allowed D5, D6. Even that doesn't lose a piece, perhaps. Yeah, D5, D6 does lose a piece. So you had one way to save the piece there. Going back, last move, I think Bishop, yeah, or Bishop D6. No, Bishop D6 is the move. It's forced. If Bishop E7, D5, D6, yeah. So you have to play this move. This is only move. You don't leave yourself a lot of room for mistakes in this position. 70-plus-year-old doesn't strike me as doing something for lulls. Yeah, that's what's weird about it. That's kind of what's weird about it, but I think that maybe, somebody else pushed him into it. That's kind of either the organizer of the tournaments or like a friend or something, or maybe a family member. I actually suspect there might be maybe the guy has like a family member, like a son, who's this other mysterious person from the same country, could potentially even be his like relative or his son. So it's pretty weird. I have the feeling, yeah, somebody like pushed him into it, maybe for the money, like the organizer of the tournaments knew that he had a lot of money or something, and that he could afford to pay for the results to get the title. I don't think a 70-year-old goes out of his way, to just for kicks like get the IM title. when he's not going to even like do anything with it. It's kind of like getting a college degree for a lot of money and then, just like not using it for anything. Or paying a lot of money to get a college degree and then not really using it for anything. Doesn't really make sense. So yeah, I mean, I think that the organizer of the tournaments where he played, or the organizers, because there's probably more than one, are probably just, manipulating him to do something for their personal profit. But dubious. The first Saturday tournaments here in Budapest are pretty honest. Although a lot of people said a lot of bad things over the years, in my experience, they say that about all chess tournaments in Eastern Europe, and I imagine other countries are bad too. But the first Saturday is pretty good. I have seen only like very isolated incidences of like thrown games, or otherwise like blatant cheating. Very isolated, where I've seen any kind of cheating. Yeah, a lot of draws like without playing and stuff like that, but really blatant like thrown games or fixed tournaments are almost non-existent here in Budapest. But in other places, if you go a little bit further afield, you can find some tournaments where you can probably do what this guy did, or at least you used to be able to do it. Nowadays, they've cracked down on the rules so that, like, for example, the games from this tournament are unavailable. Like, FIDE doesn't have any games. They could have just written down the results on a piece of paper and, like, submitted it to the International Chess Federation, and that's a joke. You don't even have any score sheets to, like, it's ridiculous. So anyway, that's where it stands. Let's move on. We're warming up. It's good to play a player who is under like 2200 for the first game, because yesterday I played Shansha my first game, and I'm having trouble waking up and really getting my mind working, and it seemed like yesterday I just wasn't prepared for Shansha. He's tough. We lost very quickly in one of the early games yesterday, so he's there waiting for us. Always very well prepared. I think he's around 2200. I'm not sure what his official rating is, but it seems like Shansha plays like he's around 2200 rating. So when I'm playing these guys who are master level, I want to be kind of ready. We've got Satis Troll, Shansha, 4-2 at Folier, Guitar Player who's getting really tough, Royal Python who's also tough, and Nova Druid is kind of a new, well, maybe new, maybe not, I don't know. A kind of new viewer here on the stream. He's played a number of games, also lost to him yesterday. Theoretical Battle, also lost to him yesterday. Boy, that's getting ridiculous. I'm like, also lost to him yesterday, also lost to him. Theoretical Battle, we had a Theoretical Battle. We had actually, that's not necessary. You just don't like playing Bishop D6. It's when it's the only move. That's the only move again. So, speaking of Theoretical Battle, we had a visit to the Chess Federation. We were watching a game from the Olympiad with some friends yesterday. India versus, maybe, I don't know, Jeroen's not here, but does anybody know what happened in the game? Oh, I know what happened. Okay, yeah, we looked at it. It was board 2 from the Netherlands versus India. Ami versus Adiban, and Adiban is this new Indian, phenom, who won he actually won on tie breaks the Weekends AB tournament this year. And what's interesting about Adiban is that it seemed like he had like a lost position in a lot of his games. I was joking, this is in the Weekends where he qualified for the A tournament next year. It seemed like he had a lost position in most of his games, but he's like insanely resourceful. And like the same thing happened against Ami yesterday. It looked like he was pretty close to like toast out of the opening. White had tremendous position in that line that we played Theoretical Battle. That's why I was like telling the story, this Knight C6 variation against the classical Nimzo. It was actually similar to the game we played yesterday. So good to see Black win. It was a bad kind of opening though. wasn't the greatest, but Adiban seems like he's just a very resourceful player. Thanks for the game there, Booker Smith, but you got to take more care with the, attacked pieces and stuff. I mean, you just sacrificed those pieces. You didn't have to. Kind of panicked on 2 occasions with bishop sacrifice, so not necessary. Satis Troll is challenging us to chess 960. The Olympiad is over. No, that yesterday was round 6, so no, not at all over. I'm not sure about the results from yesterday, though. We were just looking at a couple games from the top board. Alright, like the last couple times, I played too quickly here on move 1. And I think it's kind of weird. Should your clock start? I mean, am I just allowed to sit here and think forever? Yeah, this is actually almost the initial starting position, so one difference. We can play like it's normal chess here. Pretty much. Yeah, these 2 pieces. But I mean, c4 itself is probably a good move, ironically. I mean, the English kind of makes sense now, because we have rook b1 to support b4, and the knight can go to like c2 and influence the center. From where it often goes, this knight often goes to like f3, e1, c2. So c2 is a path for the knight where it's not really getting in the way. Nova Druid, I thought rated challenges are stopped now. Yeah, actually we should stop the rated challenges. But I think that Satis Troll is so used to it that he forgot. I forgot too. Yeah, we agreed that no more rated challenges, so... well, Troll almost always loses because it's 48-1. So, I'm going to let it slide. If he doesn't lose, he's in trouble. But, yeah, generally we're not going to do rated challenges anymore. So, yeah, he told on you. But poor Troll, he has 2 draws and like 46 losses, so it's kind of mostly time related. So we give Troll a little more credibility than his score dictates, because he almost always has a reasonable game, just loses on time. But yesterday, yeah, after losing 3 games, we kind of decided that I would play just unrated games, which I didn't make an announcement. I should actually put that in the Twitch. I'll put that in the Twitch notes with the time controls, because nobody's going to know about that, Nova Druid, unless they were here yesterday. I'm trying to get a friend of mine into chess more. Could we cooperate in a game against you tomorrow? We'd stream it at the same time on my Twitch channel, so you'd know nothing shady is going on. Is that Booker Smith? It's like fluorescent green. Rated alert? You review it and try to learn from it. It must be Booker Smith. Yeah, actually, I don't really like people, cooperating, but if you tell me in advance, that's okay, As long as it's, open and you're telling me you're doing it, then it's totally okay. Yeah, no more rated games. It's just really hard for me to concentrate, and play at the same level I would normally play. I don't have a knight coming to b2, the bd2 to support e4 here, so maybe I really didn't choose the best. The best situation for this classical kind of King's Indian formation here. This is really lame to have to play knight c2. I should have played c4 early on when I still had the chance, though my chance was gone pretty quickly. No, yeah, d5 right away. I could no longer play c4. So ironically, c4 on the first move would have probably been a good idea instead of knight f3. Now I don't have the ability to play c4. Well, I could play it and then play queen a4 check and recapture on c4. Anyway, black can play d4. If I played it on first move, though, it would have been good. Now I have a harmless kind of position, although his knight is also bad. Notice the knight, I mean, D7 supports E5. It's much, 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 much better. Knight on C7, very awkward. It doesn't really support the center. It could be pinned by bishop F4. So we both have this very strange knight. Night mode for Twitch. Easier to read the names of the chat window. Shaded, I mean. Yeah. Does night mode only exist on Lichess? Bill, do you think someone rated 2100 FIDE is strong enough to play the Queen's Indian Nimzo, or should wait until Master Strength? 2100 FIDE is pretty strong. I definitely think you can play anything. I mean, anything. I mean, that's totally one of the most sound openings, I think. You know, it's maybe more subtle than the Slav and Queen's Gambit, but, you know, more hyper modern. But I think, yeah, I mean, there's people that play a lot weirder things than that. I mean, I think that that's totally standard, to be honest. It's not even like a question. In my opinion, this is non-question, you know. Nimzo, Queen's Indian is a very, very, like, positional kind of fundamental opening. It's hyper modern, like, but, I mean, it's much better than something crazy like the King's Indian. Yeah, I mean, most people don't think about it like that, but I think it's the next to the most fundamental thing. I mean, the most fundamental thing you can do is play classically with, like, probably d4, d5. You could argue is the best way to play until a certain level, and then, you know, then you branch out to something like the Nimzo or Queen's Indian. But, yeah, of course. I mean, you totally sound openings. I mean, these are playable even earlier, but it's a fair question. I think that there's no question about that it's a good opening for that rating level. At any level, really. Although, maybe when you're first starting out, the hyper-modern openings could be avoided for a while till you kind of master classical openings. In my case, I started with hyper-modern openings right away, which I think may have hurt me because I didn't really learn classical openings, you know. I learned to play hyper-modern openings, and then later went back and tried to learn how to play classical openings, but I never really feel like I really deeply learned the classical openings, so that's where it kind of hurt me. I guess that foundation of really understanding the classical openings and classical games would have been better first. But I mean, it wasn't like destroyed my chess development, but it probably would be smoother to learn more classical openings first. Lackey Lannister said, I've seen me and JB at around the same time so much, I was surprised they don't play more games. We only played once, and I was angry because he kind of flagged me in a drawn position, but anyway, we're friendly with each other. But yeah, I mean, I think that Justice Bot is more of a bullet kind of player. He's not really playing. He was playing classical chess when I last saw, but not that much. I think you mentioned the Rosslimo variation of the Sicilian before. Could you comment on it as time pressure allows? Well, obviously we're not playing the Rosslimo here. Yeah, like the Rosslimo is when you play bishop b5 against knight c6 on black's second move. Bishop b5 on the third move for white in the Sicilian, and it's a positional way for white to play. You know, the thing is, when black develops quickly with c5 and knight c6, and white plays d4, black's pieces are coming out pretty quick, and a lot of people kind of fear these variations with white that they have to be very, very well prepared for, like the Sveshnikov and the, you know, Neo-Sveshnikov or Kalashnikov. And a lot of people just don't like to play open positions that much. So it seems to me that, honestly, the Rosslimo is a good alternative to the open Sicilian. You can play it against almost anything in a sense. I mean, d6 you can play bishop b5 check, which is similar to the Rosslimo. It's kind of like a positional way of playing against the Sicilian if you prefer more closed kind of positions. So it's very hard to argue if d4 or bishop b5 is a better move. because I think d4 leads to open positions, bishop e5 leads to strategic positions that are closed, and I think it's the most valid move along with the c3 Sicilian as an alternative. I don't think that the closed Sicilian and the Grand Prix attack and all these lines where white doesn't play something to really fight for d4 and e5 seem that serious. It seems like the Rossolimo and the open Sicilian are the only lines that are, and the c3 Sicilian are the only lines that are really critical. And if you think about it, all these things, bishop e5, c3 and d4 all do something in common, that they fight for d4. And I think that's more critical than the closed Sicilian or lines where you don't fight for d4. But it's really a stylistic thing. Like, do you want to open the position or not? Do you feel comfortable in open positions or not? This people who like closed positions, like playing more slowly and the pawns not being exchanged, are going to prefer to play bishop b5 rather than open the game with d4. It's kind of commonly accepted that d4 is the best move against the Sicilian, but that wasn't always kind of a given. And even today, some people might philosophically not agree with the fact that playing open Sicilian is necessarily better than anything else. Okay, so I don't like this pin I'm in, and I'm going to play queen c2. White doesn't really have too much. I keep thinking this is normal chess. This started as a chess 960, and it feels like just a kind of standard King's Indian attack. Black's played pretty well. I wonder about the last move, though. I wonder if it's not better to play bishop e6 in this position, trying to control c4. If he did do that, though, I could play bishop f1. Maybe try to trade my bad bishop on c4 at some point. It's an interesting question, bishop h5 or bishop e6. Maybe he wants the e6 square for his knight, maybe. Also, sometimes you can exchange the bishop for knight in such positions because it's so symmetrical and semi-closed. Classical openings equals Spanish and Italian games. Classical openings, I mean d4, d5, e4, e5. This is what I'm talking about. That simply. But a lot of people will argue like that this is classical openings. Like, okay, that's more like romantic openings. Fortuit, Foliet. I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe romantic openings are just like really old school gambits. It's tough. We're talking about something that's like, names and chess openings are and theory. It's not really a science in the classic sense. So it's all open to interpretation. The names of things, and what I mean by saying that is the classical in the sense of d4, d5, e4, e5, because it's more like 150 years ago or 200 years ago when chess was first really developing across the world. I mean, that's the way that people played the openings. It was the rare exception that anyone, didn't play or played something hyper-modern. Before Nimzovich and players like Reti and the hyper-moderns came along. And that's what I'm saying, basically. Before these concepts of Indian defenses and things that don't occupy the center with pawns. Openings that don't occupy the center with pawns. Openings that occupy the center classically with pawns is what I mean. So the vulture, knight on f5, acting like a vulture. Pretty awkward, this h6 move in such positions. Because honestly, what you normally want to do is like play f6 and bishop f7 and to bring that bishop back in the fold in some situations later on, or at least have the ability to do that. But I think h6 really weakens black's kingside. So if he does something like f6, bishop f7 to preserve his bishop on the white squares and have it like kind of control this diagonal, he's going to be hurting on the king side with that weakness of g6 on the white squares. Every time you make a pawn move, it makes a big difference. But there are arguments about that whole philosophy of what does it mean in chess, you know, classical and romantic, and yeah, it's interesting. We should do a little more research. But again, it's not a science. Even science is kind of undefined sometimes, but definitions in real sciences are vague. Chess is kind of vague as far as names of things go. Arbitrary. I wonder if I should take this bishop. It's a kind of... Not really. I mean, my knight is so strong, but... This is tough, you know. We are attacking a7, so I think that's a threat, being that it will be with tempo. Could take one bishop and then play knight h4 and try to get the other knight to... We're going to get the other knight to f5. Revolving door. But, you know, the bad bishop is... If he hadn't played h6, you could argue he could play bishop g6 here and just, you know, be willing to play with like two knights against two bishops in a closed structure. But here, bishop g6 takes, it's like destroying his... He did it anyway. Ugh, it's pretty gross. I mean, maybe he can get away with this. I'm even tempted to not take it and just to use the f5 square. It's kind of a tough call. We also have bishop h3. Is it worth it to open this and smash his pawns? I don't know. It's kind of a tough one. You argue that it gives him some counterplay along the f-file. My bishops are hard to use in this closed position, and the doubled pawns can kind of keep me frozen with g5. It may be best not to take here and just try to increase my advantage in another way. I'm really thinking this move even might be a mistake. It's just too routine. I think the best policy is for white to maybe gain space, just gain space. So this was a bad move. I should have played a4 with the idea of a5, or maybe even move the other rook to the d file. But I think all that I'm doing with this d file thing is basically, well, setting up wholesale exchanges of rooks on the d file isn't really necessarily what I'm looking for to trade pieces. Now b5 is more or less forced. The d5 square falls. That's probably really bad for black. So this square, losing this square is maybe bishop f1 and try to get control of d5. White's much better positionally here. I would expect the Bobby Fischer would win this position against the average master pretty easily. Fischer came to mind here because, in particular, Fischer played a King's Indian attack a lot, and he also... I did a series about him once for chesslecture.com. He was also very, very good in positions with two bishops against two knights, or two bishops against anything. Kind of expert with the two bishops, so I think that Fischer would have been a model player, like to play this kind of position with white. Alright, Shah, we're finally warmed up for you. We're white this time today. No comments on Rapport's game. Well, I made a comment. Oh, I didn't see Rapport's game from yesterday. What happened now? We were talking about this debacle against Shirov at the first Saturday yesterday with the Hungarian players. But I mean, Shirov, did you see what he did against Rapport? It's pretty amazing, actually. It was a Cosio variation. This is 2 rounds ago, and or maybe it was 3 rounds ago. He played the Dutch. So Shirov played... let's play d4. Shirov played h4 very, very early in a Lopez against Rapport, and Rapport just... It was actually an interesting move, h4. Very creative, but Robert just totally went crazy because, it looked like he just didn't know what to do, and he went berserk. Which is not something a 2750 player should do. Looked like he was playing like Shirov. Why did you fianchetto on the king side when you already played e4? I'm not sure I get you. I was already fianchettoed on the king side when I had already played e4. Or I hadn't played e4 yet. I played e4 after fianchettoing on the king side, I believe. But it's totally standard. I mean, there's a whole school of openings called the King's Indian attack and the King's Indian defense, where usually you're fianchettoing your bishop despite the fact that there's a pawn on e4 or e5. So what did I do? Oh, queen c2 I was talking about. This is interesting. Do you think if Karyakin beats Carlsen, dude, I'll eat my hat if Karyakin beats Carlsen. Are you kidding me? Yes, and other fantasies. If I win the lottery in November, it would be a bigger upset than Kramnik beating Kasparov. Are you kidding me? There's the same chance of me like hitting the jackpot mega bucks or something. It's 10 times more likely that Donald Trump will be the next president of the United States than Karyakin would beat Carlsen in a chess match. But it's really a tragedy, given where the tournament is being held, or the match is being held, that it wasn't Caruana or Naka who qualified for the World Championship. I mean, it would be such a sensation, and such a great exposure for chess if you had an American player. And I'm not being like nationalist here because I want an American to be like, just for the sake of chess, you're going to hold the tournament or match in New York. And the average people are going to be really, really interested if it was like somebody from there. But as it is, like, I think general people aren't really going to care. They're going to be, oh, Norwegian against a guy from Ukraine. Oh, that's great, But if it had been an American, it would have been like maybe one of the biggest chess matches in history. Technically, Donald Trump has more of a 50% chance of winning. That's not what the experts say. It's more like a 20% chance of winning was what I read. But I don't know. That was the point of reference. Given the this is not choosing sides in a political debate. This is given the electoral map of the United States. Experts say that despite the media, whatever, it's still very, very difficult. So for a Republican to win the American presidency because of the electoral map, just about how many electoral votes certain states have versus other states. It's not about like what Donald Trump's like overall popularity is. I'm not talking about like how many people poll, or not like general polls. I'm talking about like with the electoral map the way it is. It's not about like his general popularity with the population. He's up against a very, very difficult task to win, a kind of an unfair, if you will, electoral map. It's not. I don't mean like 50-50 population or polling, how many people are going to vote for him overall. So I'm just trying to say that Karyakin's chance is like very, very long shot. I mean, if the presidential race is like a long shot, this is like 5 or 10 times. So I'm saying Karyakin has like a 5% chance of winning, basically like 5 times as bad as they say like it's supposed to be for Republican in the electoral map there. So it's But I don't want to start political discussions. People get all upset and all start getting getting all into no politics here. It was just a reference to statistics here, what I mean to say. So let's not get all excited with the political stuff. Look at this f4 he tried. Playing bishop g6. That's kind of sneaky, isn't it? You guys got me talking statistics and I get distracted. So you got a very tough opponent here. He's offering to sacrifice a pawn for the exchange, which would be interesting. Bishop takes f4, bishop takes f4, g takes f, bishop g6, queen b3, bishop takes f1, rook takes f1. I would have some compensation there. Is this some kind of like prepared thing? But I didn't mean to start you guys with politics discussion here. You can investigate that on your own. But you can check betting sites and stuff like that. I mean, you can even bet on like the U.S. presidential election. You can check with the Vegas lines. I mean, I'm sure that that's pretty close to reality. Whatever, you know, they're giving as the line in Vegas would be just calculated by very serious statistical experts. F4 here. Carlsen is really, I would say, almost for practical purposes, Karyakin's chances are like 0, but you'd have to argue it would be like at least 5% because Carlsen could be sick or, you know, something could happen. Man, this is a very, very disturbing kind of position. Because my rook is attacked, I want to play rook b3. Honestly, in this position, I can't because of takes on c4. So I'm going to have to reorganize and play like queen b3 and rook b2, I guess. I don't really like this. It feels very awkward to me to play queen b3 and rook b2. It would be lazy to just sacrifice the exchange, I think, in such a position. Is knight g5 a bad move? Yeah. I mean, I don't think it does anything. Threatens one threat on e6. On second thought, there might be a little more to it. You could back it up with bishop h3, but knight g5, bishop g6, queen b3. He's taking a whole rook there on b1 and taking it first. I think that it might be a threat, but now he has bishop f5. I just don't think it was an idea, but I don't think it's enough. It's definitely an idea. Maybe you could do bishop h3 as well. Maybe bishop h3 instead would be interesting, with the idea of knight g5. Bishansha just playing very, very quickly. Yeah, but I think a lot of people don't realize that there are a lot of countries where the president is like a dictator, you know. Whatever happens, at least in the United States, you have a country where there's a semblance of democracy, so we all get excited about this, like elections and stuff, but still, like, there will still be some sort of democracy. We're lucky that you know, as an American, I'm saying we're lucky there's some semblance of democracy, because some places, if someone becomes president, they're just like in control of the country for the rest of their life. Be glad if you are from a country that has a decent amount of real democracy. Knight on b to d7. Appreciate what you have, I guess, is the lesson there. Knight on b to d7. Bishop f4. I wonder about c5 or b5. I guess I should play b5 or think about playing b5. See, the thing is, I've got to get something kind of going, because if I don't, he's just going to kill me on the king side with whatever classic kind of stonewall attack down the f-file on the king side. So this whole idea on the queen side was to create a kind of minority attack and break up his pawns and open the position, more or less. So that's what we're trying to do, to kind of open the pawn structure, to break it down, to break down the stone wall. Break down the stone wall. So that's my answer to the Carlsen question. I think he's a huge favorite. But it's still, I complained a lot the last two World Championship matches about Anand. And although I like Anand, he's a great player, it seemed like he was not that into it, just like collecting a paycheck. When he went, it was like a foregone conclusion when he played with Carlsen. I think that Karyakin at least will be like trying really hard and motivated and really into it and fresh, you know, at least in the beginning, till he starts getting beat down, and then maybe you'll see him kind of collapse. But maybe not, you know, maybe it will be like a relatively close affair. But I don't think that Carlsen will ever let it slip. And you know, he may win by just like 2 games, some kind of relatively close margin. I don't think that Karyakin's going to get blown out. There's no, you know, unless he just collapses psychologically. He's a pretty stable player. You know, we're not talking about Rockport Richie here, who's like a maniac. Rockport is like, for example, a young player who's unstable. I don't mean mentally, I mean chessically, like unstable. Like, he does crazy things. So Karyakin would never do a crazy thing. He's the antithesis of like crazy. He's very, very calculating and, you know, almost robotic. He makes Carlsen look like the most creative player in the world. Queen e7. Carlsen, who's extremely practical. Queen e7. I noticed that Russia has Karyakin playing on board 1. Even though, you know, at least Kramnik is higher rated. Kramnik just gets dissed all the time. Like, first of all, he doesn't get invited to the World Championship Candidates Tournament, and then he gets dissed on the Olympiad team. Like, he has to play second board because of does anybody know? Is that because of like the fact that Karyakin qualified for the World Championship? I mean, should it really be related, or is Kramnik just constantly like getting dissed, or was it similar? Like, it was based on a probably nobody knows, like the Russian Olympic decision rules, but it seemed like Kramnik's just constantly getting dissed all over the place. Don't know what I'm doing here. We'll just make a random move. Have you seen any games from round 6? No, I have not. Yes, I did. Excuse me. Yeah, I just saw the top 2 boards from India, Netherlands. That was it, to be precise. Bishop takes f6, I guess. It's a bad bishop. Closed position. Dark square bishop's kind of getting in the way. I don't have a good place to put it. On f4, my king side gets kind of opened up. Hopefully we can just win this with a smooth, forced variation. You gotta be kidding me. He saw it. Rook b8. There's no way to protect my rook. Okay. I have to sack the queen here. We have some compensation. Probably not enough. But there's something. Alright. There might be enough to frazzle black here. What do I have? Not enough. I have just a piece. Man, this is disaster. No, Shanshah's playing better. Better than usual. He saw the rook b8. It's unbelievable. I had, and every other variation wins by force. Damn, dude. My rook can't be protected. Oh, bishop b4. Okay. This probably just lost now. She's gonna beat me every day. Oh well. Good thing we made no rated games. Nepomniachtchi did a robotic thing. Nepomniachtchi is not a robotic player, actually. That's kind of interesting. He's a really creative player. He's like a, I don't know if he's a student of, but he's a really close friend of Morozevich. And yeah, he's, what did you mean by that? He did a robotic thing. A non-sphere crossing was ridiculous. Yeah, it's totally. Here we have some serious compensation now. Wow. Wow. Nice defense, man. Sorry guys, I'm kind of busy at the moment. I'll get back to you. I have more time to think. Seems like black is just making random moves. My mouse is stuck. Oh, terrible problem with my mouse. I never lost because of mouse before. Oh my god. So, what happens sometimes with my optical mouse, something with the battery actually makes the mouse freeze. That's so sick. Oh, the optical mouse. Wrong game. So we're just completely winning at the end. I never had the optical mouse actually freeze at the end in a time scramble before. Oh my god. Oh, optical mouse. Then you have to take the battery out of the battery compartment and put it back, and it takes like... I didn't think I had time to do it. So that's good. Alright, man. Fortuit Folier. E4. Yeah, I should have taken the time to take it out of the battery compartment. I had like 15 seconds. I think I had close to 15 seconds at one point. But I don't know, I was hoping it would wake up or something. Oh no. Alright. But it was kind of like hoping for something that's never going to happen. Generally speaking, you have to take the battery out of the battery compartment to make it wake up. I really don't understand. I guess it may be the battery itself not connecting. I'm not sure. That doesn't make sense though, because the light's still on. But we'll see. Need to buy a new mouse. Alright. I don't really know modern theory on this variation. I usually play the Panov Botvinnik with white against the Caro-Kann, but I've been experimenting with different stuff. This is a very old variation. It was always considered to be basically the main line for white in the Caro-Kann. E6 strikes me as kind of a weird move order. Wouldn't it be more usual to play something like... Maybe not. More usual to play knight f6? Maybe not. Interesting. If I play bishop f4, black can play queen b6 or something like that? But it's ironic that it never happened before. That the mouse, you know, it does it a lot, like in the middle of my stream when I'm just randomly playing. And it's like no big deal, you know, I'll just take the battery out, put it back. But, yeah, I've had this mouse for a couple of years now. It's probably time to get another one. What's the lifespan of a mouse, anyway? Supposed to be? I wonder if bishop d3 is even not the best. Over the board, I was wondering about bishop f4, queen b6 for black. Is that a bad line? But the theory here in this variation is just massive. It just, even like 30 years ago, it was pretty deeply explored. So black escaped very luckily there last game. I have practical compensation, not really enough, but enough to make it difficult. How about trading bishops there on d6? It seems like that would be the most reliable thing for black to do. But I understand it's your good bishop. Maybe you don't want to trade good bishop, I don't know. This is really new to me. I mean, I haven't played... Actually, my whole life I didn't really play this variation too much. I played a little bit with black, the bishop f5 Caro-Kann, and then I sort of switched to playing other variations with knight f6 and knight bd7 or knight d7 because I just wanted to be different. But objectively, it's like only bishop f5 in the Caro-Kann looks good. Everything else looks inferior. And I've been fighting against that with black my whole life, but it's really... I think it's time to accept reality. You know, the bishop f5 is the only good move. I noticed that, like, Nigel Davies like wrote a book recently on the I think on the knight f6 Caro-Kann. I mean, that's a little ridiculous at this point in time to start writing books on the knight f6 Caro-Kann. It's just kind of like fact now, you know, that the knight f6 Caro-Kann basically sucks, you know. You can play the g takes f Caro-Kann, but it's not a good opening. It's kind of unsound. And the e takes f Caro-Kann is just black's trying to get a draw at best. And wireless mouse. So it seems like you have to play bishop f5. I tried to play knight d7. It's always losing, always suffering for black. Karpov played that. Kasparov lost this sort of, what do you call it, like conspiracy theory game against deep blue. It's good for losing if you play knight d7 or knight f6. It seems like you have to play bishop f5 as black in the Caro-Kann. I noticed there's a French IM here playing Bullet a lot. I don't know if he's on now. Oops, I want to stay on page. It's so bad you can't click on community and players while you're playing. Does anybody know who that guy is that's a strong Blitz player here and Bullet player on Lichess? What's his handle on Lichess? One French IM who's very high rated is constantly playing the g takes f Caro-Kann. It's pretty unusual, and you know, I think it's just like a force of habit, but I don't think it's a good idea. You know, I don't think that would hold up in serious play if you played it on a regular basis. So what are we doing? Rook e1, rook h4. Rook h4 is sometimes played in other lines, but it doesn't really look natural here. We'll go to the center, I guess. No, Unvu Masseur is a... You know, that's a... Who's the guy that's constantly here playing? He's just constantly on the site, like all the time. He's basically always playing the g takes f Caro-Kann. I mean, that's really making life difficult for yourself. It's like handicapping yourself. Let's make chess hard. Play the g takes f Caro-Kann. Something 6-4. I don't know, remember. Wow, bishop e7. Could this be a fatal mistake? Yes. Maybe not fatal. We have d5. Subtle threat. And the pin along the e-file. And then we also have another surprise for black. But actually this might, you know, black might be able to survive this, withstand this. But how, though, actually? Yeah, this is a problem. Yeah, the only move looks like it, the only move that looks reasonable looks bad too. I see one way the black could survive a little bit, but not really. I mean, almost. Yeah, guys, thanks for pointing out my YouTube channel. We're still trying to put up a video for this week, maybe today. You can check that out. Also, if anybody's interested in lessons, I constantly have people taking lessons and then quitting because nobody wants to stick with something. So everybody's like really into it and they quit after a few months. Give me an email if you're interested in lessons. Always have room for new students. Actually, I had a strong player come to me this week about training. So I'm working with people all the way up to 2300 plus. E takes D7 check. We got lucky here. So we're up clean piece. Yermolinsky, my final move against him in one game, was reminded to me here. I should change his batteries a long time ago. But I don't think it's the batteries, like power. I thought it was just that the batteries are loose. Like the battery compartment, the connection is loose. I don't think that the problem is that my battery is bad. That's the point. It's just that the connection to the power is loose. Yeah, so this is the Yermolinsky last move, Bishop A5. It's a weird move that you don't see coming usually. You walked into it. That's not good. So I don't know, I appeal to anyone who's a Caro-Kann expert. Does this look right? H4, H5, and then knight F3, E6. You know, is E6 really? I seem to think they play everything here. Knight D7, probably. Knight F6. But I'm wondering, is E6, is that a main move or not? Because I don't play this line very often with white. And it's been 30 years since I really looked at the theory. That's right, 30 years ago I looked at this. Alright, guitar player, Nova Druid, theoretical battle, Royal Python. So we got a whole list of like expert, strong expert, or candidate master. If we want to be politically correct, we call them candidate masters now. You can't call anyone expert, it might hurt their feelings. Just kidding. European people don't know what we're talking about. Expert is just like a American category for chess players who are like 2000. You're technically an expert. Whereas Eastern European and Russians and everybody else probably call it candidate master. Candidate master. We always said expert. Alright, so let's go. Guitar player. I was calling guitar player like there's an R there. Elda 64, right. Yeah, I don't know who the guy is, or even like really watch him that often, but because he's usually on Lee Chess TV playing, like slaughtering somebody. But I did notice that he's just consistently playing the G takes F Caro-Kann, and that's like bizarre, you know. I mean, for a strong player to play that as like their main opening is pretty strange. Who knows? Maybe he goes through phases. He just happened to be playing the G takes F Caro-Kann the last few months, but it looks like he's the world's leading expert in G takes F Caro-Kann. I'm just making a joke about political correctness. It's like a political correctness sort of parody. We don't want to hurt anyone's feelings about expert. Don't use the word expert. Candidate master and expert mean the same thing. But expert isn't politically correct. Wow, weird opening, man. I'm having some fun. Oh, you mean the Elda 64 is having some fun? Well, you're having some fun if you're like playing it once in a while, but he like literally plays it every game. Nigel DVDs made a DVD on AE6 for Foxy Chess like 16 years ago. Okay. So it really has independent value. That's what I wanted to know. I mean, it's distinctly different from... It does feel distinctly different from like the main continuations. So Nigel Davies is everywhere. He's an expert on the on that, and so he's maybe a Caro-Kann expert. I didn't realize that, because he also did the recent book on, like I said, Knight F6 Caro-Kann. Nigel Davies. I played him once in Hastings, and it was a draw. I was black. He played like a fianchetto variation against the King's Indian. That was a long time ago, around 1994 or something. Don't Scandi against the C-pawn. Yeah, generally speaking, it's not a good idea. He's basically playing a kind of martial defense, or I don't know what it is, reversed. But guitar player, don't listen to the man. I mean, the one thing that's kind of interesting about him is that he doesn't really know the openings that well. But as I was talking to my friend yesterday, who's like a 2250 player, I think really objectively that openings are not that important. They're overrated, especially below the Grandmaster level. I mean, IM level or whatever. I mean, when you become like 2400 or professional, like you're playing professional players, then opening is important. If you're not playing constantly against professional players, then it's not necessary that your focus be on the opening. It actually makes you tougher if you play badly in the opening. And I think like for a guitar player, that's the effect. He doesn't really know the openings that well, but it makes him get bad positions, which makes you like learn to be a good player all around. Like Karpov became a great defensive player, more than a defensive player, but a really great prophylactic style player. We're going to get giggles in the audience when I say that word again, but that's literally a style, you know. C4 is an interesting and dynamic move here. I think there's no question about this here. Taking allows them to trade queens. Black might equalize, but I don't think it's the best. And if I play anything else like e6, it's going to turn into a towerish type position. So I think this is basically forced to play d4 here. Got to play the openings no matter the rating. Wouldn't want to start with h4 or a4. No, you don't want to go that far. But I run into a lot of players who are like obsessed with opening theory when they're like 1500, and you know they should be focusing on more fundamental stuff than trying to memorize 20 moves of theory in the Najdorf. That's a big place you can go wrong. I mean, wasting your time when you don't have the fundamentals of the game really well understood. You know, really there's just no need for anybody who's not a professional to memorize 30 moves of theory in theoretical openings. Bishop takes c6 here. Guitar player pushing the extremes of reasonable. This is interesting now. We have some ways of defending that pawn on d4. Now obviously you can see I can play c5 and it might be the best move. You can also play e5. If I do play e5, you're trying something new. Well, it looks a little dubious. But if for a fast game, it's interesting. if I play e5, he can't take because he loses a piece, so he could play e5, queen a4, which would threaten to take the pawn on e5, as well as threaten to take the pawn on c6 with check. And you could have a variation like e5, queen a4, queen c7, knight takes e5, which probably wins for white. So I guess the moral of the story, the c5 looks a little more stable. I wonder if this is really Guitar Player's idea or if someone else has done this and he prepared it for a unsuspecting customer. How about e5, queen a4? I mean, he doesn't have to play queen a4. He could simply develop with castles. e5, queen a4 looks kind of annoying. Sort of reminiscent of the Gingy Indian or whatever. You could play b4 at some point, try to break up the pawns. What's your opinion on queen's pawn opening first? Like London system, very good. That's a whole school of players, you know, who have. I like to draw examples from the Russian or Soviet players who played like that. Kamsky comes to mind because he's relatively modern. You know, Gada's still playing those openings, and you know he's learned that when he was like a student. So Dreyev is a friend of mine. He's another player who was trained to play basically non-theoretical openings on purpose so that he would develop the other elements of his game. But Dreyev is the only one of those guys. Karpov. I mean, Karpov actually became somewhat of something of a theoretician. Kamsky, on the other hand, never really seemed to care that much about opening theory, even in his prime. This is an interesting approach. Yeah, I think those are great openings. The London system now is under a lot of public scrutiny because of the popularity it's been given by Carlsen. There's a book out, or maybe more than one. So maybe the London system isn't the best opening at the moment. You know, if you want something that's really trendy, maybe it's not the best time to play a really trendy opening now. But there's lots of stuff you could play, like the Trompowsky, Tory Attack, Verisov, things like that are like closed queen pawn openings. I could certainly justify sacrificing a pawn at some point based on the power of my white squared bishop. This piece should be very, very useful on the long diagonal. White also has an isolated pawn on c4 here. I'm thinking that's going to be a pretty big weakness for the rest of the game, you know, so there is an alternative to play knight d7 in that position. So even if I give him this pawn, I mean, what I'm trying to say is this pawn on c4 is just a massive weakness. You could play e5, but that doesn't really fit in with my overall strategy here. But we do have e5 hitting the queen, though. Just gonna sack a pawn. I want to get developed. I'm down to 1:42. Yeah, this is why I don't want to play rated games. I mean, I'm spending the whole game like explaining to everybody what's going on, and then I'm playing for rating points against guys who have like 4 minutes more than me. So I'm basically giving time odds. That's, I guess, why we want to do away with the rated challenges. Opinion on the Evans Gambit? I mean, it looks like the Evans Gambit will always be like valid. I don't think it's going to be like refuted. White will always have enough for... It has to be a sound opening, you know? Just maybe you're not going to surprise anyone with it. I think it's a perfectly good opening and fundamentally correct. 2 new books came out this month in the London. Yeah, I'm not surprised. I mean, it's sort of a trend, and anytime you have a trend, there are chess authors who are just like desperate for a material of what to write about, and the London is really, really easy to explain. So it's the perfect target for rating a book on something that isn't really a difficult subject, honestly. Pretty much anybody could write a book about the London system. I don't think you'd even have to be a master strength player. Bishop b2. So white has a pawn, and I have the bishop pair and good structure and compensation. I'd honestly rather be black in this position. But we are a little short on time at the moment. Like, it would be tempting for him to play bishop c5, but it looks kind of dangerous to abandon the long diagonal, so I don't think he's going to do that. Whatever happens, happens, but I feel like I didn't refute his opening. But from the standpoint of playing black, I equalized. So my continuation here may have not been the best, but it was enough for the purpose of getting out of the opening with a reasonable position. I think it also illustrates, you know, how to play to more or less. Okay, I better start thinking here. More or less. Wow. Okay, this is an interesting situation. Really weird situation right here. We're both getting low on time. My last move is sort of debatable. He could have played knight e5, and it was going to get really weird if he did that. Knight e5, queen takes d4, knight takes c6, queen e6, knight takes e7 check, king h8, and I'm not sure what's going on there. Whoa. I just almost lost my mind. Okay. Almost lost my mind. I almost played knight g4, but it doesn't work. But I could have played knight takes e4. I could have played knight takes e4? Then he plays bishop takes g7. No, that was my point. It doesn't really work. Seems like. Wow. d5. This is bizarre. It's like should have some sort of tactic here. I probably should have played this move earlier. Seven, 5. So 5-second increments, a little easier than 3. Wow. Everybody's a GM. 95, you have that. What? Why would he want to exchange, to avoid exchanges there, really? Ooh, tough game. Man, you really were probably better. I'm not sure if I had enough compensation all the way through there. Yeah, that was lucky. That was a very tough game. Okay, another tough game, Nova Druid. Everybody's a GM. Like, you guys are strong. We've got a lot of strong players. Now, Theoretical Battle's unrated. We lost yesterday. Is that his only rated game? We're not going to give you any more points, Theoretical Battle. Although, that was arguably my worst game that I lost against Theoretical Battle yesterday. I really had a good position and lost. The other games, I don't think I had that good a position. As I did against Theoretical Battle, I was probably slightly better. And then I got totally off track in time pressure. But alright, Nova Druid, where are we here? He's asking if she played the Queen's Indian and Nimzo. CM didn't exist before. Definitely. I think it was... Yeah, I don't know when it started, Fate. Well, not officially. Now FIDE can charge money for it. But again, then ratings below 2,000 didn't exist either. Knight BD7. This is a lot different than the Queen. I thought you were going to play the Queen's Indian. You were asking about the Queen's Indian. And now he's going Knight BD7. So we had one game against Nova Druid with a Tartakover Queen's Gambit. Now he's playing a completely different variation. H6 here. H6 strikes me as a bit weird. Most often you would see, I guess, C6 there. Trying to go into a Cambridge Springs. I could play bishop f4. Bishop f4, bishop h4. What's going to happen if I play bishop h4? I'm on my own here. This is a very rare position. Bishop h4 seems like the most normal move. Okay, so we're going to transpose to some game from the Olympics. The requirement for CM is 2200. Okay, I didn't know that. CM. Okay, so there is a game from the Vietnam-England match. Was it this variation? No, it was something totally different. I'm getting confused. Aren't I? Yeah, no, Rook C1, that's it. It's Adams playing black against Quang Liem. Rook C1, C5. That's apparently a new thing. It was always my assumption that that's just always bad for black. But what other options does white have here? We can always play an exchange variation. Actually, what's up with that? What is up with that? Let's see, you take with a knight on d5 or something, most likely. cd5, knight takes d5, bishop takes e7. Knight takes e7? What is that, some kind of Kramnik drawing line? That's what it looks like. Alright, we'll play like Quang Liem. My favorite opponent. I had him completely busted. One of the 2 or 3 times we played. I think just twice I played him, but he was totally lost and I let him off the hook. It was unbelievable. He was just like down a pawn for absolutely 0 and managed to save the game. I remember that. That was just absurd. I was so pissed off. Extremely tough fighter, though. Never imagined he would reach 2700. c5. D takes c5, right? Harry Shiva says, why is Shansha scoring so good against you on Oliver's account? Well, this last one he seems to be scoring better than before. So he must have improved, because before I had a solid winning score against him. Although his score was always reminiscent of what should be, I would say, someone who's at least 2200. Now this beating me 2 games in a row, it's pretty impressive. We don't know. He doesn't tell me what his rating is, so I don't know his identity and I don't know his rating. I'm just, you know, under the impression that he's a legitimate player, but he's very secretive about his identity. So I'm giving him credit for 2200 ELO and just being lucky in the last 2 games. I haven't played too well this week, to be perfectly honest, so I'm not going to really base my evaluation on how good anybody is the way I've played this week. I'm not in my best form. A strong 2100, 2200-ish. With a little bit of luck this week. What is up otherwise? I'd love to be an IM, but the amount of studying involved and money involved with coaches and books and tournaments. You start early like me and you don't have to invest a lot of money. Yeah, but it's harder when you're older. Yeah, good point. All right, so it looks like we're, following Quang Liem Adams type position, although I don't remember exactly how it went down now. Bishop takes c4, knight takes c5. Doesn't seem like it was that clean. It seemed like white got a small edge. Bishop takes c4. I could play c6 to give the pawn back for a structural advantage type of thing. But I'm not sure it's all that it's cracked up to be. I mean, these pawns, like, excuse me. Here we go with the time again, but the isolated A and C pawns aren't as bad for black as it might look. And often in the Caro-Kann, one of our thematic openings for today, for discussion, those pawns on like A7 and C6, if I do C6, B takes C, those pawns tend to be pretty useful and not that easy to pick off. Guys, I don't know, this is the game. I only looked at it once. I feel like I made a mistake or something. Maybe I'm supposed to play c6 there. Because honestly, this doesn't look real dangerous for black. But again, Nova Druid, another player, I don't know, and if everybody's anonymous, so nobody is open about their identities. I would appreciate if more people were more open about their identities, but that's the way it is. Very few people here seem to share their identity on Lichess. Most of my opponents are anonymous or semi-anonymous. Nova Druid is a new player here, whereas Sean Shaw has been playing on the stream for months, but we still don't know who he is. Just for example, but okay, if you become not anonymous, people can, if you're a tournament player, people can use that to their advantage to prepare for you in rated tournaments. But honestly, I don't think that it's that big of a threat. All right. Against Adams, the game was different. I'm 100% certain. I kind of let black get away with something here. I don't really have an edge. Queen's Gambit declined is but Queen's Gambit declined is kind of hopeless for white, I think. Like most openings, it's impossible to get an advantage. Adams held that game against Quang Liem anyway. This variation should be worse for black. It looks kind of dubious. I mean, h6 and c5, there's got to be a way to put the question to this thing. Just need to take a look at it. Self-service says, nah, I don't have any games in a database. I'm not good enough. Well, I guess you can play literally hundreds of tournaments in the United States and have no games in a database, because unfortunately the United States Chess Federation and the organizers in the United States don't think it's really important to make tournaments in that country internationally rated. So for tournaments to be rated internationally, the games have to be submitted, I guess, to FIDE, and the federation has to pay money to have the tournaments rated. Like, for example, in 2013, I won the New England Open, and it wasn't even counted for FIDE rating. Years ago, like, all major tournaments in the United States were rated, both USCF and FIDE, and now, sadly, most of them aren't. So, Self-Service says he has no rated games. But if he's an active tournament player in the United States, he should. He doesn't, but he really should, you know, because that's not how things should be, you know. Unfortunately, that's the way it is. Because the U.S. Chess Federation is too cheap to pay for tournaments to be rated under FIDE. So now we have to play this ending, or just an itty bit better. Interesting. If we could all just play under the same rating system. So now let's take a look what's going on here. Rook d8. It looks basically equal. But it's really ridiculous in the modern day and age when tournaments in a major country like the United States don't count for international ratings. I mean, it's just absurd. Like, every country in Europe, the games are sent to FIDE and rated like internationally. Almost in every country. It's just crazy. So, you have a lot of strong players in the United States who don't even have FIDE ratings. That's actually always been the case. But at least now, there are some tournaments that are... It is possible to get, like, title norms and stuff, whereas in the past it wasn't. The rules were more strict about things like getting IM and GM titles. So FIDE loosened the rules in that respect to make it easier for, like, American tournaments to count for title norms. Question there is Black better off going active with Rook d1 or not? Probably it would have been an interesting call. We have a nice little advantage. Nothing momentous, though. We just goes e5. I expected king f7, centralizing the king, but rook there. All right. It should be a draw, I think. But on the other hand, if you're playing a really, really strong technical player like Kramnik or even Quang Liam, you're gonna have, you're gonna have to play this out and play like perfectly to hold on. Yeah, this could be a mistake for me to play like knight c3 there. Alright, let's be a little more aggressive. There goes my mouse again. If I had 15 seconds, I would have lost on time right now. Yeah, best not to let myself get under 30 seconds in any situations with the mouse in the current state it's in. I think that's probably the best. I think taking on c5 is probably just a draw. So I decided to try this. To keep the game more complicated. Knight d3 was kind of a weird Weird possibility there. Wait a minute. I can win a pawn? Oh no, there's a trick. Okay. There's a trick. There's always a trick. This is his idea, like last move. Wow, okay. Maybe I should wait with h5. It's a little bit inflexible. I want to fix the pawn on g7. Because Zugzwang is such an important concept. He has that. Dude, what's with the constant draw first? It's probably a draw anyway. Alright, I don't know. I was close to better, but probably not enough to win. Royal Python is challenged me to chess 960. Ooh, this is a weird position. The knights and the bishops are next to each other. Royal Python, take some time to get used to the position. Well, if my mouse had conked out again, you would have won. I said I wasn't going to get under 30 seconds till I buy a new mouse. I felt like lately I've not like played in 960 where I'm kind of like controlling the center. I made a lot of flank moves, kind of like Royal Python did with f4. And I feel like it can be a big mistake in chess 960. The pieces aren't really placed like in normal chess. But this looks reasonable, actually, for white to play Dutch style with the pawn on f2, with the rook on f1, knight coming f2. These bishops could get out to like b2. This will turn into a kind of Dutch for white, whereas for black, I might actually have a little bit more difficult time being second to move, I think, with this knight. Maybe we could operate on a theory that the bad placement of pieces in chess 960 might sharpen the game and make it more advantageous for the first player. I'm not sure. Knights in the rim, particularly, very difficult for the inferior side. So these pieces, it's a huge issue. f6 is really weakening. Play knight g6. Maybe 47 g5. Can't remember exact moves, of course, but I'm trying to think. G5. I had a breakthrough for g5, and I didn't want to do anything committal, like right in that time pressure. But yeah, I mean, probably critical. It looks like he played a little passively, trying to just, make quick moves and playing default solid moves. At the end, that might have given me enough to be seriously better there. Because there's no time to calculate, unfortunately, in the blitz like that. There's just no time to calculate like long variations. I always want to castle normally, but you have to touch the rook. So strange. So hopefully we prove ourselves an advantage here. I like to argue that when you face the Dutch, you've succeeded and you've proved his opening inferior. If you wrest control of the e5 or e4 square, whatever color you might be playing, if you're white against the Dutch and you manage to get in the advance e4, with white you're usually good. And if you're black against the bird's opening, I guess if you can play e5, you're usually good. However, I mean, gambits like the Staunton Gambit and the Fromm's Gambit are obviously sacrifices. That doesn't necessarily mean you're good if you're sacrificing a pawn. It's a different story. But if you can get it in, it seems like you've put the question to their opening. If you type e2, it will highlight the pawn. So you can actually do, that's like the old school days, playing chess in the computer lab. When I started school in the early 90s, the initial chess sites were all based on typing in the moves with coordinates. That's awesome. I remember before there was ASCII code boards. Those were the first board, the ASCII code boards. That's crazy. Yeah, I use a trackpad and type in my moves. Or whatever. Rook e1. Black's a little bit better here. Let's develop this rook from his or her initial square. I guess if you want to just develop classically, you put the rooks on d8 and e8 here. I can also consider d4 at some point. Trying to open up his king side, break his pawn structure apart, although you have to be careful. He might have queen b2 My queen is not protected. So maybe I need to play rook fe8 at some point very soon. Chess, a4, okay. So I feel like that's a slight advantage for black. I mean, we got him to commit some pawns to white squares. And in any endgame, you want the other guy's pawns to be on the same color as his bishop. I already have these pawns on the same color. My bishop, nobody has a dark squared bishop here, which obviously would be a huge asset in this position with the dark squares all kind of a little bit weak. I would probably prefer to have a dark square bishop to a white square bishop here and play like opposite colored bishop position where I could attack him concretely on the dark squares. Something if I could trade this bishop on f5 for a bishop on d6, the game would have a whole different character. Wow. That is a radically anti-positional move. Pawn to b4. Well, I don't think there's a lot to think about. I mean, I really need to take... We do have to think about taking on c2, though. I mean, this wins a pawn temporarily. And although I'm normally non-materialistic in nature, this one needs to be seriously analyzed because it is pretty serious looking. If I play bishop takes c2, queen takes b7, he's on my c6 pawn. And then if I play bishop takes a4, I have put myself... No, I haven't. No, I put myself in a weird pin, you know, with this rook against the a8 rook. I'm threatening rook b8 there. It's confusing enough. Bishop takes c2. Get rid of this line now. Bishop takes c2. Queen takes b7. Bishop takes a4. Defending my c6 pawn. But I'm pinned. And you could play something like knight to d3, maybe. Hitting my queen. Well, there I could play queen e7, hitting his queen, driving him away. Well, let's see. I don't see a concrete refutation of this pawn grab. If I don't see a concrete refutation, I'm going to go for this because it's a clear pawn. If I can just win the a pawn, I'm going to be a clear pawn up. I am putting myself in a precarious position. I could be wrong, though. I have another move. So that's complicated as well. The rook on a1 is hanging, so queen takes b7, rook takes a4 is possible. So he decides to play like it's a pawn sacrifice, and played a5. But I don't think this should be enough for him. However, we have some technical problems. I think we can work it out. Ooh. There you missed a really, really dangerous plan, man. I mean, I think you can just trade queens and trap my bishop with d3. I mean b3, d3. The other letter that I'm trying to say. Don't you have queen takes queen and d3? And I was going to play d4, but I forgot that you can just simply play e4 there. And I'm going to be down a piece. Okay, there I have rook e5, but it's not going to be enough. I'm going to end up sacrificing a piece for maybe 3 pawns. I can get 3 pawns for a piece. So that's the other reason why basically taking on c2 was dangerous. It's not obvious, but there is the possibility of the piece getting trapped. And if there's no other